Warning: the following video contains graphic content that may be disturbing to some viewers. In a shocking display of brutality, these notorious gangsters were caught committing unspeakable acts of cruelty in pursuit of sexual gratification. The story, which has sent shockwaves through the community, reveals the lengths to which some individuals will go in their pursuit of power and pleasure. Brace yourself as we delve into the disturbing details of this heinous crime. Two young friends, Jenny Ertman and Elizabeth Pena, were brutally raped and murdered by a gang of 6 in TC Jester Park, Texas, on June 24, 1993. Jenny was only 14 years old and Elizabeth was 16. Can you imagine the horror and fear these girls must have felt in their final moments? According to reports, the girls were leaving a friend's pool party and decided to take a shortcut past some railroad tracks to make it home before their curfew at 11:30 p.m. Little did they know, there was a gang, called the Black and White Gang, holding an initiation ceremony for a new member at that very spot. The gang members were Sean Derek O'Brien, Jose Madeleine, a 14-year-old minor named Venancio Madeleine, Efren Perez, the newly initiated member Raul Villarreal, and the gang leader Peter Cantu. During the initiation, Raul had to fight each member of the gang until he lost consciousness, but when the girls walked by, Peter mistook them for a man and a woman and became frustrated. He ordered his gang to chase after the girls, and they caught Elizabeth and pulled her down the incline from the tracks. Jenny tried to run, but the gang caught her too. When Jenny heard her buddy scream for aid and got herself caught, she hurried back to Elizabeth. The entire gang then began to rape the girls. The gang members' confessions in court revealed that at least 2 persons were raping the females at once, according to their testimony. For nearly an hour, they were sexually assaulted orally, vaginally, and anally. Madeleine claimed that he tried to convince Peter and his brother to go while rushing back and forth between them, but Peter simply kept encouraging him to go get some. He lost it and attacked Jennifer. Peter realized after the group had finished that they needed to kill the young girls because they might be able to recognize them. The group instructed Venancio to stay behind since he was too young to witness as they escorted the girls into some nearby woods where they were hiding. Together with Villarreal, O'Brien began to choke Jennifer with his red nylon belt after taking it off. The belt snapped as a result of both killers tugging on opposite sides. Then they kept entangling her in her own shoelaces. After Elizabeth sobbed, pleaded, and attempted to negotiate for their lives, Cantu Jose, Madeleine, and Efren Perez murdered her with shoelaces. Before they passed away, they were kicked and abused. They stomped the girls' necks and kicked their bodies after they had finished strangling the victims. Jose Madeleine, Perez, and Cantu returned to Cantu's home, where he resided with his brother, Joe Cantu, and his 16-year-old sister-in-law, Christine Cantu, to assure their demise. Christina questioned Perez about his bloody clothing. Madeleine said they had fun. Then he confessed to having sexually assaulted 2 females. He even said that it would have been simpler to use a gun. When the group began trading the valuables they had stolen from the females, Madeleine took a ring bearing the letter E to represent his own lover. Christina begged Joe to tell someone what had occurred after the group departed. Joe secretly provided Crime Stoppers with information about what had transpired and where they could discover the remains because she felt terrible about the girls and their families. 4 days after the girls' death, on June 28, 1993, the remains were discovered. Their teeth had to be used as identification since the bodies were so decomposing. Elizabeth's 2 front teeth were knocked out of her mouth before she passed away, according to the medical examiner's testimony. Cantu had crushed Jennifer's ribs after she passed away and had kicked many of her teeth out with his steel-toe boots. Randy Ertman, Jennifer Ertman's father, was about to speak to a reporter about his missing daughter when he overheard a police officer through the cameraman's scanner announcing that they had found 2 bodies. Can you imagine the fear and uncertainty that went through his mind at that moment? Randy took control of the news van and drove to the scene where the bodies were found, but police officers had to hold him back as he frantically asked if one of the bodies had blonde hair, hoping against hope that his daughter was not one of the victims. The brutality of the rape that Jennifer and her friend Elizabeth Pena suffered shocked all of Houston County. The scene was so terrible that even hardened soldiers were seen tearing up at the sight of the girls' bodies. It's hard to even fathom the depth of despair that the families of these young girls must have felt. All of the gang members responsible for this heinous crime were caught and sentenced to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Peter Cantu, Jose Medellin, Raul Villarreal, Sean Derrick O'Brien, and Efrain Perez were all given the sentence of death. Even a 14-year-old boy named Venancio Medellin, who did not participate in the murder, was involved in the rape, received a maximum sentence of 40 years in prison. However, the Supreme Court of the United States later banned executions of people who committed these crimes while underage. This meant that Perez's and Villarreal's sentences were commuted to life in prison. Sean O'Brien was the first to be executed in July 2006. His final words were directed at the victims' families watching his execution. He said, holding his head up and looking straight at the relatives of his victims, "I'm sorry. I have always been sorry. It's the worst mistake that I have ever made in my whole life, not because I'm here, but because of what I did. And I hurt a lot of people, you and my family." He repeated again and again that he was sorry. It's hard to believe that Sean O'Brien, one of the gang members responsible for the brutal rape and murder of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena, was previously linked to another murder just 6 months before. Patricia Lopez was found raped, disemboweled, and with her throat slit at a Houston park. A beer can with O'Brien's fingerprints was found under the remains of the woman. It's truly terrifying to think about how many lives could have been saved if he had been charged with that crime. But it's not just O'Brien who was involved in the disturbing case. Peter Cantu, the gang's leader, was the last of the members to be executed in 2010. It's chilling to think that he offered no words of apology or remorse before dying. Jose Medellin, who was executed in 2008, tried to appeal his sentence by using his international position. He was born in Mexico and argued that he should have been allowed assistance from the Mexican consulate before the trial. However, both families of Jennifer and Elizabeth strongly supported his execution. It became an international controversy as the state did not hold a hearing about whether the inability of Medellin to meet with Mexican consular officials harmed his defense. It's heartbreaking to think about the pain and suffering that all of these victims and their families endured. Even though some of the gang members expressed remorse before their execution, it's hard to find closure in the wake of such a terrible tragedy. This case is truly shocking, and the charges it sparked in Texas state policies are a testament to the gravity of what happened. The brutality of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena's murder led to two major policy changes that aim to provide some solace to the victims' families. One of these changes was brought about by Judge Bill Harmon, who allowed Jennifer's father, Randy Ertman, to directly address one of the killers, Peter Cantu, something that was not typically allowed before. This was an important step towards giving families a voice in the legal process and enabling them to confront those who had caused them such unimaginable pain. The second policy change concerned the viewing of executions. This case was instrumental in getting Texas law changed so that victims of murdered family members could watch the killers of their loved ones die. Elizabeth's father, Adolfo Pena, felt that the deaths that the rapist got were too good for them. He wished that his daughter could have died the way they did, and he wore a t-shirt with a photo of the two girls printed on the front as a constant reminder of what had been taken from him. When asked about Cantu's silence, Pena said that there was nothing he could have said that would have made a difference. Cantu had committed a horrendous crime and he deserved to die, and 17 years later, he did die. But for Pena and the other families, it was not soon enough. The pain of losing a child in such a horrific way never truly goes away, and they think about Jennifer and Elizabeth every day. This case serves as a chilling reminder of the devastating impact that crime and violence can have on families and communities, and it's heartening to see that some policies have been changed to try and offer some small measure of comfort to those who have suffered such unimaginable loss. And that concludes our video. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and make sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one. Until then, peace.